So it's going to work. This time for sure it's going to work, right? It's Helga. Oh. Yep. Yep. Oh, wow. Is that Agnes? Yeah, it is. I'm pretty sure. I mean, who else is it going to be, right? Do you have to be somewhere? Oh my god. Dude's just going to walk right in, eh?
Wenn ich Kinder hab, dann will ich anders sein.
Aw. Well, look at him. He's grown up too.
Redest du eigentlich nie darüber, wie es da war, wo ihr herkommt?
Ich war lange in einem Heim.
Ah.
Meine Mutter hat einen Bruder, aber ich glaube, sie hassen sich.
Oh.
Sie ist glücklich hier?
So it's not the husband. Noah is her brother then. Here it comes. Woo. Gotta love that, man.
Dieses scheiß Gespenster.
Wow, she really does look so different, eh? Perhaps a conversation she had in the caves. Wow, great shot.
Jetzt sag doch endlich was.
Lady, you need to step out.
Die Zeit.
Just like Noah told him, right?
Noah.
No.
Du darfst ihm nicht vertrauen. Niemals.
Oh, okay.
Niemals.
I stand corrected. He has moved on from Noah. Wow. The bunker. Okay, so she had to show up here at a really specific time. Who's down here? Ah. Now that's interesting, isn't it? Because
Das musst du mir geben. Nicht jetzt. Das hat noch Zeit.
wow. So she is not part of that group anymore? She flipped? Switched sides?
Ich wollte dir danken. Für alles.
Oh, this looks like a goodbye. Oh my god.
Ich hab mich gefragt, wann es soweit ist.
Yep. He saw older Claudia, right?
Wann wir
A young
uns
townhouse at least. Wow. Look at this. Whoa.
Nimm du dir den Irren nochmal vor.
Oh, yes. Huh. That gives him pause though, right? Because last time he certainly said something that caught his attention about his wife leaving him, right? And him turning to drink.
Diese Worte haben sie 1953 zu mir gesagt. Das hier.
Oh, okay, look at that.
Ja, veröffentlicht.
At least Egon's putting things together, right?
Der weiße Teufel.
Ooh.
Wissen Sie, wer das ist?
Certainly fits a description, but I think it's meant to be Claudia.
Bist du verwirrter als ich?
Warum haben Sie uns nie gesagt, wie Sie heißen, wer Sie sind?
So he does realize. He's clocked it.
Ulrich Nielsen.
Oh, maybe not.
Und ich komme aus der Zukunft.
Similar to Mikkel telling Ines.
Ein Hochstapler nennt.
Oh.
Haben Sie schon mal vom Bootstrap-Paradox gehört?
Yes.
Nein.
Go on then. Give her a rundown.
Mein Name ist Tiedemann. Egon Tiedemann.
Sind die Medikamente. Den hier müssen wir in Ruhe stellen.
Oh man.
Also Ulrich Nielsen.
Mikkel.
Behauptet sein Vater.
Oh.
Das Paradoxe ist, dass ich Ihnen das alles noch nicht hätte erklären können.
Jonas.
Aber letztes Jahr hat es mir selbst jemand erklärt.
Whoa. Don't think Noah expected that reaction, but it's understandable.
Egal, wohin du gehst.
Time rather than God.
Michael schläft gerade.
Am Tag.
His reaction.
Den Namen Ulrich hat er dir gegenüber auch nicht erwähnt.
Oh, okay. You can tell she doesn't want him around others.
Ich schlafe in letzter Zeit wieder schlecht. Ich habe
Is that right, Ines?
Albträume.
Noch eine Sache. Hättest du vielleicht ein Foto von dem Jungen? Nur für die Akten.
She doesn't like that, does she? Mikkel certainly has nightmares, that's for sure. Just for the files, oh my god. Oh, there's another use for it. I know exactly what he's thinking right now. He's gonna go show Ulrich.
Wenn du glaubst, Adam lässt dich zurück, dann irrst du dich. Du hast deine Seite
So she was expelled, or... Okay, she picked a side.
Für
She
dich
made
gibt's
the
keine
choice to...
Lösung.
Ich weiß, wo die letzten Seiten sind. Und ich weiß, wie lange Adam danach gesucht hat.
Is this all part of Claudia's plan? To have Agnes go back to Noah and like present
Im
this?
Gegenzug will ich, dass du Adam sagst, dass ich zurück will, bevor der neue Zyklus beginnt.
Oh, wow.
Betrachte es als ein Friedensangebot.
Oh, wow. Oh, wow.
Ein braunes und ein blaues Auge. Das ist selten. Wie meine Tochter.
Du bist ein so guter Mensch. Aber das warst du schon immer. Die Welt hat dich nicht verdient.
Oh, wow. That hit me hard, man.
Es tut mir leid. Du hast nichts davon verdient. Aber manchmal trifft es die Guten am härtesten.
Think of Helga, think of Jonas and
Ich verstehe
Egon.
nicht, dass es mir leid tut, dass die Dinge so gekommen sind, wie sie gekommen sind.
Wow. Okay, this really feels like goodbyes. She's trying to get her goodbyes in here. Is today the day she's supposed to die? Is that the reaction Agnes was giving her after reading? She had this smile on her face as well, right? Claudia? This acceptance of it. Wow! Just like Claudia was sitting here, right? Older Claudia. I'm really loving the focus on this family right now.
Warum hast du mich vorher angerufen?
Immediately flipped. The demeanor and the...
Nächste Woche zum Beispiel.
Ich habe Krebs. Prostata.
Regina had breast cancer and he has prostate cancer.
Ich wollte nur, dass du Bescheid weißt. Du hast sicher noch eine Menge zu tun hier.
Yeah. This is a good man.
Papa,
Go on, give him a hug or something, man. Wow, his reaction to that. Whoa. Wow.
Du bist wieder da.
Hallo, Prinzessin Naseweiß.
Yeah, I'm a mess. This is an incredible episode. This sequence right here is just...
Ich glaube, ich habe heute eine Hexe gesehen.
Es gibt keine Hexen.
Doch. Diese war ganz echt. Lange, weiße Haare. Nee,
I mean...
Und was hat sie gesagt?
dass es ihr leid tut.
Das hört sich aber nicht nach einer Hexe an.
Right.
Du bist ein zu guter Mensch, Papa.
Wow.
Die Welt hat dich nicht verdient. Alles in Ordnung?
Just a bit of...
Noch ein Déjà-vu.
Yeah. Martha had that moment too, right?
Das Schlimmste, was einem im Leben passieren kann,
Wow.
ist das eigene Kind zu verlieren.
Wow, man. I'm sorry I'm a mess, but it's that type of episode.
Da ist ein Junge nach Winden gekommen. Unbekannt. Kennen Sie diesen Jungen?
Oh my God.
Er ist hier. Wo ist er? Du hast es gewusst, dass er hier ist.
Easy, easy,
Du
easy.
hast
Calm
es
down,
die
Ulrich.
ganze Zeit gewusst. Wo ist er?
But imagine being in that position. 34 years he spent. She's kind of making like rounds to everyone that's important to all of this.
32 Jahre, bis es soweit ist.
Right, I've seen that part.
Das habe ich schon mal gesehen.
Yeah, yeah. Ulrich showed him.
Sie können es behalten, ich brauche es nicht mehr.
Warum geben Sie mir das?
Ich werde bald tot sein.
Yeah, I was gonna say, yeah.
Ich verstehe nicht.
Irgendwann.
I love how it's flipped now from the earlier scene.
Wipes for a blow of fate.
Wow. The cross kind of looks like a T almost, right? Time. Uh-oh. Yeah, I don't buy that Agnes is selling out Claudia. I think it's part of the plan. Oh my god, is this it? It is. Oh my god. Come on, Noah. I thought you're smarter than that. I mean, she knows this.
Ich bin keiner deiner Bauern mehr.
Oh.
Aber Adams bist du noch. Wenn du wirklich frei wärst, hättest du eine Wahl. Hast du eine
How
Wahl?
about that? Ah. Look at that. Oh. She's been kind of uneasy, and you know that shot of her at the table. Go on then. There it is. I mean, that looks exactly like the illustration Charlotte and Peter had in the bunker. I mean, this is all meant to happen, right? She wants Noah to find these.
Charlotte. Das ist nicht. Nein, das stimmt aber nicht.
Goosebumps, man. Here she is.
Egal, wie sehr wir dagegen ankämpfen.
87.
Wir sind verbunden durch unser Blut. Am Ende würden wir doch alles für sie tun. Ein roter Faden, der all unsere Leben miteinander verbindet.
Look at that. Different use of Ariadne's thread.
Hatte sie die Seiten dabei.
Oh. So is he Charlotte's father?
Sie hat bekommen, was sie verdient hat. Am Ende bekommen wir alle,
Whoa.
was wir verdient haben.
Ulrich said that, right? Wow. That is one of my favorite episodes of the show. Easily. I thought that was an incredible episode. Wow. I mean, the filmmaking on display here is just a masterclass, essentially, in my opinion. Most impressive. Most impressive. Right then, like I just mentioned, at the conclusion of that episode, phenomenal. Just phenomenal. I think this is some incredible storytelling on display. Dark is just something else. This is so special. I'll keep saying it, but you know, every single episode, it just kind of keeps it going on such a staggering level, right? This is incredible storytelling, man. This is exciting stuff. This is so exciting. I mean, wow. Like I mentioned, you know, most impressive, and I'm so incredibly excited that I have so much left, you know. I believe I still have 5 more episodes of this season, and then I've got 8 more after that. You know, earlier on in the series, you know, the first half of season 1, you know, my mindset at that point was to, you know, kind of get to these as quick as possible, right? That I do want to get to them, or I do want to get them out quickly. But, you know, after a few more episodes, things changed. Now I'm so happy about this pace, right? Listen, honestly speaking, if I could, I would slow it down even more, right? Again, you know, that's just one of those things that's not practical though, right? Given that I do content on YouTube, and then, you know, there's subscribers that do expect content. But, you know, I feel like if anyone can understand my thought process, it's got to be the fans of Dark. The people that really adore this show, the people that are really obsessed, right, with this show. You know, I'm certainly obsessed. I've been obsessing over this for some time now, since season 1. After a few episodes, I was so into this story, into these characters. But listen, you know, before I go any further, no, I'm not going to delay these episodes anymore. But I'm sure you can understand the thought process, right? That I kind of want to slow it down even more. You know, the break in between these episodes. There's just something so special about this that I don't want to, you know, kind of get through it quickly. This is a once in a lifetime type show. You know, you're just not going to see anything that's like this, right? This is rare. This is rare, and you could tell it's rare. I could tell it was rare really early on from season 1. And, you know, I remember mentioning that I could see this becoming a problem, that, you know, that I'm not going to be able to kind of fill this hole Dark is going to leave behind once I do complete the series. once I do reach the conclusion. Yeah, it's a bit of a depressing thought, actually, even now thinking about it, that, once this concludes, there's going to be nothing that can quite replicate that feeling I have at the moment. But I'm so excited that I have so much of it still to go. I know you all know exactly, the feeling I have right now. I know for a fact all of you must have had that exact same feeling. So I'm gonna try not to think about that, the conclusion of the series. I'm gonna try to be in the moment, right? In the moment. Yeah, this is, I said this is a masterclass in storytelling, in filmmaking. I feel like I'm not exaggerating there. I know there's a lot of new subscribers that are checking this out, and of course, thank you for joining me for this. But if you've been around for a long time, you know just how rare this is. Me being this complimentary, me being this infatuated. I think everything about this show is just incredible, right? It's of the highest quality possible. Of course, the acting, the storytelling on display, the writing, of course, on display. The technical aspect of this is just second to none. The photography, the editing, the visual storytelling. And like I mentioned before, it's just so thematically ambitious, right? And, the really incredible and surprising thing about this episode is the fact that, the major focus of this is Egon Tiedemann, right? Wow. I mean, it's essentially the Claudia Tiedemann and Egon Tiedemann episode, right? They are the stars of this episode. And I thoroughly enjoyed that, and I love that focus. This father-daughter relationship through the years, and the focus on it. And, there's that sequence near the second half of the episode, right? That takes us through the different counterparts of Claudia Tiedemann and Egon Tiedemann, right? Through the years. That has to be one of my favorite sequences from anything in recent memory, right? Be it film, shows, anime, gaming, anything. That is just, oh my goodness. You saw just how much of an effect it had on me. You saw how much of an effect Egon Tiedemann had on me. Like Claudia Tiedemann mentioned twice at different points in time, the world does not deserve you, or doesn't deserve you. You're too good. You're too good of a person. And she's spot on. She's spot on. Egon Tiedemann is, he's a good person. He's a good man. And he doesn't deserve any of these things that are happening to him, but that's just the nature of things. That's just the nature of this story, this show. I mean, even in reality, sometimes that's the truth. Sometimes the nicest ones get hit the hardest, right? And it's really difficult to see Egon Tiedemann go through this. It's really difficult to see Claudia Tiedemann go through this, right? Especially older Claudia, who passes on in this episode. It is her death episode, essentially. But also at the same time, it's the beginning of her journey, right? The beginning is the end, and the end is the beginning. It's so good, man. It's so good. Before I go any further, I just have to say, make time for your parents. Make time for them. Call them. Just make time for them, man. That was one of the reasons I was getting so emotional during the. Yeah, it's kind of, I'm getting choked up even now thinking back to just that relationship, and the regrets Claudia Tiedemann had later on as well, about her father. And, I thought it was incredible that she actually got a chance to go see him. And the acting on display is just so believable. It really hits you, man. And I'm sure many of you have the same reaction to it, that it really gets you in the heart. Her sitting down across her father in 53. Wow. The way she was looking at him, the tears in her eyes. Yeah, wow, incredible moment. It moved me so much. And, it hurt. It hurt because that's one of the reasons that sequence was so effective, because, after that moment, they kind of transitioned to 87. And they show us some of the reasons Claudia was so apologetic for, right? Her treatment of her father. She kind of, it took essentially him telling her that, he has cancer, for her to really maybe, have a moment. But, before that, she was really standoffish, wasn't really treating him like a father, really, more like a client. It really had me thinking about my own parents, my own father. Anytime storytelling can do that, if it can affect you on such a personal level, you have to give it proper credit. You really do. And this, like I mentioned, I have a strong attachment to pretty much all of these characters at this point, and it's really affecting me on such an emotional and personal level at this point. Not that I have a bad relationship with my father. It's a great relationship, but it still had me thinking of my parents, of my own father. So the conclusion of the episode, I get to see Adam again. This really polarizing figure, and I'm certainly not going to try and guess who this is. This might be one of those situations that I'm just going to kind of let it happen. Listen, if they give me enough things to connect the dots, I'll throw a name out there. But as of right now, I'm not trying to just throw names out there and take guesses. I'm just not going to do that for this character. I know it's got to be someone I know already, but I'm not going to go any further than that at the moment. I want to see the progression leading up to his identity, essentially, or the reveal of his identity at some point. But once again, insightful monologue by Adam, who's certainly been around the block, who's certainly been around, who's probably time traveled quite a bit, right? Quite a bit. These really strange lacerations, these burns, essentially. These look like burns. Remember I used to think the Helga had burns, but no, that was something else. These actually look like burns, right? Some kind of major accident, being exposed to something. But yeah, that's just insane. But yeah, he, like I mentioned, he is polarizing, but he is quite insightful. He speaks and you listen, because he has a lot of interesting things to say and impart on individuals like Noah, whose real name I still don't know. I know he's a Nielsen. I know that much now, right? Given the fact that they confirmed that it's a sibling relationship. Agnes Nielsen and Noah Nielsen. I mean, I can't say that because it's not actually his name. It's not Noah Nielsen, but Noah. Let's say Noah. And of course, Bartosz implored young Noah to ask Adam at some point, how come he decided to call you Noah, or how come he gave you that name, right? And he implores him to not listen to everything he has to say, or not just blindly follow him and listen to everything he has to say. And you see here, as expected, he's not completely dialed in. He's not completely part of that crusade. He's keeping secrets from Noah. And, even before that moment, I think I mentioned in the first episode, season 2, episode 1, that in fact, I think he probably dislikes Adam quite a bit. Essentially, everyone has their own side quest, right? You see Noah is no different. He's got his own thing going on here. You see he's not being truthful. He's keeping secrets from Adam. He does not want him to have these pages because of the implications of it, essentially. And, they've confirmed that there is some type of concrete relation between Charlotte and Noah, right? My first thought is this Charlotte's father, right? Even if he doesn't end up being her father, I know there's some kind of relation here, right? There's got to be. There's just too much connecting the two at this point. The things he came across in the missing pages, that was so shocking and so jarring and so unbelievable to him that he decided it was a better option to just not even tell Adam about these pages again, because Charlotte came up, right? She was mentioned in those pages. I'm sure I'll get to find out in the next few episodes the specific details of that. I mentioned Adam and his poignant, insightful monologue in this episode. I thought it was certainly in line with how things kind of played out in this episode, or the focus of this episode, right? Bonds, familial bonds, and the notion that even if you can be alienated from your families and not understand the reasoning for their actions, you're still connected by blood. At the end of the day, that is that common thread. As he mentioned, that you are able to do anything for them, or you still do anything for them, right? And he's not wrong. He's just not wrong. Family is family. It just is. And you see that even Claudia made that point with Agnes in the bunker, right? Agnes firmly felt that, she's not afraid of her brother anymore, that she's moved on, she's cut ties. But, Claudia reminds her, you might think you've cut all ties, but, blood, that thread that connects you is much stronger than that. That whole idea of being able to do anything for your family, that's been on display in this story since the beginning, right? There's multiple characters that have been able to do some really horrific things, some dark things, for their loved ones. You think of Ulrich Nielsen, a tragic figure of this story. You see just how far he was able to go, to protect his own son and other children as well. I mean, he was fully committed to actually killing Helga, right? His actions are just horrific, yet that's how much it means to him. That's his conviction, right? That's the type of thing he was able to do for family. Now you have Claudia Tiedemann, right? Who's kind of beginning her own journey, 80s Claudia at least. You see her motivations. Regina Tiedemann, right? That she is trying to do quite a bit to, make sure that she somehow lives. And her reaction to seeing Regina, wow, that was so raw. That was so believable. I thought that was incredible. But yeah, she's essentially on her own journey at this point. And as established in the first episode of this season, it was 80s Claudia, right, who survives this apocalypse. See, now I'm not really sure yet if she is going to go back to the 80s once or twice before she kind of, stays in 2020 and then kind of survives the apocalypse. But yeah, she's certainly on that path now. She is firmly intertwined in this time traveling aspect of it now, right? And it's incredibly exciting to see her journey unfold. Season 1 was all about Jonas, right? His journey and, that incredible moment in the finale, him finding out that indeed that's his future self. Now the focus seems to have shifted to Claudia and her journey. But, there is a character, Agnes Nielsen, who was kind of able to sever these ties, renounce her blood. And she felt that, renouncing your blood is essentially freeing yourself. Though you see that Claudia wasn't as, accepting of that notion, right? She reminded her, at the end of the day, that's still your blood, right? You do share blood. During the episode, I firmly felt that this is all part of a plan, but it totally could be possible that indeed Agnes did kind of, switch back. That at the end of the day, it is blood. She thought she was kind of over it. She moved on. But, perhaps ultimately nothing is thicker than blood, right? But even if that is the case, I believe that Claudia knew all of this. Listen, there's two possibilities, right? Either it's actually all part of a plan. Claudia told Agnes about this and she told her, oh, you have to do this. You have to, go show this to Noah and you have to kind of get back in there. Right, you have to get back into Sigmundus, essentially. Use this as a peace offering, as she stated. And as established in episode 1 of season 2, she used to be part of that secret society, right? Then she made the choice to leave, or she was expelled, or, they didn't make it sound like she was expelled or anything. But, Noah said, you made your choice, and you left. So even that in itself is quite exciting. Something led to that change of heart, and she kind of switched sides. Perhaps Claudia was able to convince her, to help her see the other side of things. But yeah, so there's that possibility that she is firmly team Claudia, essentially, and this is all part of a plan to get back into the secret society as a sleeper, essentially, as a double agent, maybe, I don't know. Or she actually did kind of go back to her family at the end of the day. And even then, Claudia might have known this, and she still needed this to happen, perhaps. Claudia knew she was about to die, right? She was so accepting of it. And, it was really starting to feel like that in the episode, right? As she's making the rounds, especially after that incredible scene of her and Egon Tiedemann, right? Young Egon Tiedemann in the 50s. Then it became really clear, okay, this is a final goodbye, trying to get some of these apologies out there, some of these regrets she's had this whole time. Even though Egon Tiedemann doesn't understand anything at that point in time, at least, though he is going to understand at some point, according to Claudia. And you go back to the 80s, Egon Tiedemann, and he is kind of making a lot of progress, isn't he? Right? Now that he's retired, he's really kind of getting into this. He's taking a deep dive into this. He's trying to follow up any loose ends, close the file. And I'll circle back to that aspect of this, Egon Tiedemann's investigation post-retirement. But You know, sticking to Noah and his reaction to all of that, and Charlotte being a major aspect of this, I think, you know, there is a connection now, right? That photograph of the secret society, Sigmundus, that was found by Ellie Doppler in the workshop, right? In her great grandfather's workshop, in one of those books. There is a bit of a connection now that I can make, right? Noah is from Sigmundus, right? Noah clearly has a connection to Charlotte, and you know, through Ellie Doppler, he kind of tried to make contact. You know, he told her to give it to her mother. So Ellie Doppler was never in danger of being kidnapped or anything. Though, of course, you know, it was quite clear they're only using boys. So is this my missing link? You know, is this the person that actually goes to see Tannhaus? And perhaps he's the one who kind of mentions this secret society. And I'm speaking of Noah, because, you know, he has a photo, right? So someone from Sigmundus came to him at some point. Now, you know, now that there is a connection there, you know, Noah and Charlotte, I don't think Tannhaus is related to Noah or anything. I just don't. Tannhaus feels like a really special case. This outlier, essentially, that plays a major role in all of this. You know, he's a major aspect of all of this. A lot of things kind of pivot around him. So, you know, my thought process here is that perhaps, much like a lot of these other things, Charlotte kind of came to him, right? Kind of fell into his lap, much like a lot of these other things. You know, in this episode, he kind of almost jokingly calls himself a fraud, though he is being quite real about it. You know, he is being quite upfront about that. That, you know, the book came to him before he even wrote it. And, you know, that whole concept of the bootstrap paradox, and it plays a big part in this. And I love how, you know, older Claudia, who just died, was the most experienced out of all of the time travelers, perhaps second only to this Adam individual, possibly, right? Who seems to be, I don't know, man, he's been around. He's clearly been around. He's been there and back. But, you know, Claudia is a master, essentially, you know, high level time traveler at this point. Yeah, you see that a younger Claudia is in her infancy, essentially, in terms of time traveling and everything that comes attached, right? And you have Tannhaus, who has to explain something as simplistic as a bootstrap paradox. Simplistic in the sense that, you know, there's so much more complicated stuff here, right? But, you know, that's her first lesson, the bootstrap paradox, so she can understand how the book comes to him, how, you know, the machine, the contraption is here once again. And I also love that dynamic that, you know, older Tannhaus, you know, it's been a long time. You know, he spent years expecting someone to come back, right? Or expecting a younger Claudia to come back, as older Claudia told him. But it took a long time for that to happen, right? So imagine having that thought in the back of your mind for a long, long time, that you are expecting that. That'd be an incredible situation, right? But then on the flip side, you have young Tannhaus, who is so clueless. He's frustrated. He's really creeped out, or he's really freaked out, right? And you cannot blame him. You cannot blame him. But now you see that 80s Tannhaus is in a position, in a really, really important position, to be teaching young Claudia, 80s Claudia, these things, right? But they don't really need to go into detail and show us all of that once again, because they already showed us Tannhaus and the Stranger in season 1, right? But, you know, Claudia knows how to utilize the contraption, and she is in 2020. And, you know, I've got to say, Claudia has become my top 3. I think it's really safe to assume at this point that, you know, I love Claudia Tiedemann. 80s Claudia, older Claudia, even young Claudia in the 50s, right? As a child, she's quite a clever child, you know, one that doesn't get enough credit, clearly, because she is clever. She sees things, she understands things, she knows she walked in on her mother and Agnes doing something they shouldn't have been doing. And you kind of see that play out a bit later on, as she's kind of complaining to Tronte, telling him that, you know, her mother doesn't think I understand anything. And then later in that beautiful scene, as Egon comes back home and he's got young Claudia on the table. I mean, she saw the flowers, right, on the table, and she immediately asked him if those are for mama, for mom. And, you know, that's the reason she kind of thought, you know, her father is too good, that the world doesn't deserve him. because she knew, right? Here he is, trying to do this nice thing for, her mother, for Claudia's mother, for his wife. Yeah, she knows her mother's off, or, these days she's being sneaky and doing these things with Agnes, right? So even young Claudia was able to kind of read Egon's character, right? Even then she knew how good of a person he is, right? That he's too pure for this world. And, even Ines' father, I believe he said, oh, I didn't know they made him like you anymore, or they made people like you anymore, right? So yeah, like Claudia said herself, you don't deserve any of this. And she was truthfully really apologetic and sorry about how things played out, how that relationship played out, and the things he had to suffer and go through. But then also, young Claudia in the 50s told Tranta that, she's going to be a totally different type of mother, that, she's going to be different with their own children. It was more of the same, wasn't it? Her and Regina. Though, you see in this episode, there's a shift in demeanor, right? Again, many things play a part here. Her older self essentially telling her that she doesn't have much time with Regina. So, I think that certainly played a part here. Regina changing so much is playing a part here as well. That her daughter is kind of changing in front of her eyes. She's growing up. But that whole concept of things repeating themselves and, behavior being passed down from generation to generation, or ghosts being passed down from generation to generation, or attached from generation to generation, the ghosts of their past, the ghosts that haunt them, right? That stay with them. And of course, you kind of go back to the beginning of the episode, that whole cycle of cheating, right? Being unfaithful, that's coming into play for sure. That was strongly hinted, but now I kind of see it at play, right? That they've kind of crossed that bridge at this point. It's quite the opening scene. The opening scene, the cold open is essentially a fascinating one, but the opening scene after the intro, right? Claudia's mom, whose name I still don't know. But yeah, you'll have to let me know if I just missed it or they haven't mentioned it yet. But yeah, I don't know her name, but she was certainly experiencing something quite nice. Something that she probably hasn't experienced in some time. If you go by the conversation Egon was having with Ines' father, whose name I don't know either. I guess I don't know a couple of names. I feel like they haven't told me his name yet, or they might have, and I just kind of forgot. But yeah, so once again, you've got a Nielsen and a Tiedemann. You've certainly got a Nielsen, right? So Agnes Nielsen, you've got Tranta Nielsen, you've got Ulrich Nielsen. Just like Ulrich tells Hannah that she's beautiful, right? In episode 1 of season 1, you see there's a similar scene here, right? Agnes Nielsen kind of tells Claudia's mom that she's beautiful. It's a carbon copy essentially. She even does kind of like that thing on her cheeks, kind of runs her hand on her cheeks. But speaking of the Nielsens and all these familial connections, so yes, Agnes and Noah are confirmed to be siblings. That makes Noah a Nielsen, meaning he is also related to Ulrich Nielsen and everyone else that comes after Ulrich, be it Ulrich's own children, and then Jonas, because Ulrich is also Jonas's grandfather. So yeah, as expected, these connections, the whole family tree stuff is getting kind of crazy now, right? Though I feel like maybe I'm just scratching the surface. There's just so much unallocated parentage still that I've discussed, in the first 2 episodes or in the discussions for those 2 episodes. But yeah, I feel like this might just be the beginning of it all. But as I'm on the topic of familial connections, let me go back to my initial point from a couple of minutes ago at this point, maybe, more than 10 minutes ago at this point. But, I was speaking of Charlotte, and I mentioned this idea or the notion of once again something else falling in Tannhaus's lap, right? So, is it possible that Charlotte was kind of brought to Tannhaus? Was she brought by someone from Sigmundus? Was it Noah himself that brought Charlotte to Tannhaus, maybe? Is that the reason he was never able to tell Charlotte about her parents at all, right? Because he himself probably doesn't even know. That could be the big thing here, that he himself doesn't even know. So how's he supposed to tell Charlotte about her parents? And of course, tying it all back to Adam's poignant monologue, Yeah, he's speaking of blood, family, things you're able to do for your family. You see perhaps Noah is able to do things for his own family as well, if he ends up being Charlotte's father. If not the father, some other type of relationship. I think that much is kind of clear. There is some kind of connection here, some kind of relationship. He does not want to share those pages because it has something to do with Charlotte, right? Clearly, sharing those pages puts Charlotte in danger, right? So he's decided not to. And notice how anytime Noah is in Adam's presence, he's got a totally different demeanor. He almost barely speaks, right? Anything or any sort of reply is always kind of like yes or slow nod, no, right? He's not trying to speak. And ultimately, it's highly likely that Adam even knows that Noah is holding this information back, that he must have the pages by now, and he's holding this information back because his reaction to Noah's reply, essentially, it was so laid back, laissez-faire, so nonchalant, right? He immediately moves on, and I believe he said she deserved it. Claudia deserved that. She deserved to die. So it's clearly someone that's been wronged by Claudia as well at some point in time, right? I said that, I'm not going to try to take guesses. I'm not going to just throw out names in terms of his potential identity, but that kind of connects them as well, doesn't it? Adam's resentment towards Claudia and the fact that he thinks she deserved to die, that certainly, it certainly makes things interesting, doesn't it? That they had their own run-ins in the past, perhaps, or at some point in time, right? Again, it's an illusion. It's all happening at once. Yeah, so, that's something I certainly need to put a pin in, that, they must have known each other at some point, or as different counterparts of themselves, potentially. Perhaps a younger Adam, much younger Adam, knew Claudia, right? And you see that Noah, he says something quite interesting. He said, I'm not one of your pawns anymore. So even Noah was kind of, on Team Claudia at one point, or he was seeing eye to eye with Claudia at some point. But then he kind of got pulled into the Sic Mundus. But Egon's investigation in the 80s was quite interesting, right? Goes to see Ulrich, much older Ulrich, once again. Goes to see Ines, right? He wanted to see Mikkel, but he wasn't able to see Mikkel. And it really felt like, Ines was not trying to have Mikkel around anyone, essentially. It's strongly hinted that she's actually sedating Mikkel, much like how Ulrich is being sedated in the 50s, right? Again, that's a heartbreaking sight. You see he was trying to reply to Egon Tiedemann, but again, the medication seems to be so strong, right? So he actually did want to say his name, but again, the medication's kind of messing with him, right? And his timing. And then it appears that Ines is sedating Mikkel as well. She tried to deflect it and say that it's for her, right? That she's been having trouble sleeping and she's having nightmares. All of that can essentially apply to young Mikkel as well, right? They've established that, he struggles a lot, right? He has his own nightmares, trouble sleeping perhaps. So you could potentially just apply that story to Mikkel, right? And it might be just that. But, again, the notion of it being during the day, you see Egon's reaction to it as well. It feels like this isn't just a one-time thing. It feels like, this might be almost a regular thing for them, her kind of sedating Mikkel. Ines, she's been one of the most lovely characters of the show, but, there are some things that I'm starting to pick up about Ines as well now. You see that she is really quite attached to Mikkel, quite protective, maybe overprotective, actually. You see that she's not really happy about sharing Mikkel. She doesn't want outsiders kind of potentially, doing something that could separate the two, right? She told Egon that, he's trying to move on from all of that, but, they've shown me that Mikkel still had a lot of troubles trying to move on, and it was Ines who implores him to move on from all of this. So, yes, there is a bit of an overprotective nature about Ines. You see that she did not like the idea of handing out a photo of Mikkel. You could tell she keeps a really low profile in terms of Mikkel, right? But yeah, as expected, it wasn't just for the file. He was going to go show Ulrich, and he got quite the reaction out of Ulrich, and that's exciting and heartbreaking at the same time. That imagine him kind of sitting in his room that night, and there is a scene, right? Him kind of thinking of this situation now that indeed Mikkel is here, and that he spent 33 years in the wrong time, right? The wrong time period. He overshot, right? Too far back. But, you know, it sets it up. It sets it up. Ulrich knows now. He knows that Mikkel is here. So, I don't know. Can Egon get him out of there? Is it possible? Is that even realistic given the fact that Egon seems to be on his last legs, essentially? Or could Ulrich himself get out of there somehow? I don't know, man. I think there's just too much set up there now. Agonizingly close, you know, now that even Ulrich knows that Mikkel is here, for them not to meet. Come on, man, they have to meet. Just once. Please, just allow it. Just once. But, you know, as I say that, I have to remember Mikkel and the fact that he is starting to accept his fate, that he is trying to move on from this and accept his new reality, right? Or kind of grow up in this daze, essentially. So you kind of do have to think of the psychological aspect of this, him potentially coming across Ulrich. And it's not the Ulrich he remembers either. You know, this is a different Ulrich, right? Much older. Let me switch to the cold open. Incredible cold open. You see Helga makes his first appearance of season 2, young Helga, that is. It was lovely to see him, of course. You know, the young actor who plays Helga, he's grown up as well. And you see that he spent 6 months or 7 months, right, in the 80s, essentially, right? And I guess in that time, he was getting a lot of training. He spent a lot of time with Noah. Is it even possible he took him to the 20s, right? Could it be possible? I don't know. You know, did he meet some of these other people from the secret society, Sigmundus? I don't know. Did Adam ask him to bring Noah to them at some point? You know, in that time span, in the 6 months, he was in the 80s. And you see in that time, Helga certainly developed a respect for Noah, right? That he had a connection with Noah, essentially as a savior, someone who looked after him, someone who probably showed so much interest in him, even more so than his own parents, right? Certainly more than his own mother. Yeah, you know, it's possible that he's never had that kind of affection and attention from an adult. And, you know, even the dialogue in the beginning, you know, I've seen you grown up, I've seen your entire life play out, almost kind of like a father, right? And, you know, he reassures him that he's protected, that they're looking over him, that, you know, time chose him. And once again, time is being presented as this entity, right? This godlike entity rather than God. And I love how some of the verbiage is so similar to a priest speaking of God, right? And the belief of God, and, you know, religion. He's speaking in that manner about time. So I really love that aspect of this. I really do. You see Helga, even, you know, older Helga in the 80s as Claudia goes to him. That had quite an impact on him. And again, you know, it's sad to see the state he's in. You see that even the attack, the brutal attack, the rock attack he kind of suffered through as a child, it certainly affected him, right? His capacity, essentially. You know, it probably had a major effect on his brain. And, you know, the thing is, he was even before that attack, he was already kind of simple. He was perhaps a bit behind the curve in comparison to the rest. Though, you know, Noah had him reading that one passage. It's possible that he only trained him to read that one part or recite that one part. Or it could be much more than that. But, you know, even that in itself was a shocking experience for his mother. And the other major aspect of this is the fact that it appears that all of those trials, you know, Mads and Eric and Yasin, all of those, they were essentially done so ultimately they could send, or Noah could send, young Helga back to his own time period in the 50s. So he could ultimately kind of help him with making the contraption in the first place, the time machine in the bunker, the chair time machine, though it looked much different at this point, right? Instead of that thing that kind of locks in front of your eyes, it was a full like enclosure essentially that closes. Now, you know, my question about the chair time machine essentially, didn't Noah have the contraption, the time machine, the one that Tannhaus builds, right? He used it. I mean, he's been using it quite a bit, right? He goes to get Bartosz in 2020. He goes to the 20s time period, right? A few times. He was there in this episode as well. He's in the 50s. He's in the 80s. He's all over the place. So couldn't he just use that to take Helga back? Though, of course, I guess he can't be seen, right? Yeah, I guess I kind of answered my own question. I think he can't really be seen with Helga, right? So Helga had to show up on his own. So he used that to send him back. after a lot of testing from the looks of it. You know, unfortunately, it took a lot of sacrifices. And notice how there's a plushie doll, a plushie toy essentially of a lamb, right? So, you know, it's quite deliberate, right? The sacrificial lamb, right? Or lamb to the slaughter, all of that stuff essentially. But yeah, you know, I've got to say I'm so excited to see the next episode. There's so much exciting stuff set up here. You know, I want to see the continuation of Helga, young Helga and Noah in the 50s and the progression of that relationship, right? I want to see 80s Claudia in 2020. Oh my goodness, how exciting, how exciting. You know, I want to see Agnes, right? And I want to see Noah and that relationship playing out in the 50s. And you know, this whole idea of her potentially getting back into Sigmundus, and if indeed it was a plan all along, you know, her and Claudia's plan to get her back into Sigmundus, or indeed she did flip and she did sell out Claudia. But even then, I think Claudia would have expected that anyways, much like how Adam might even know that Noah isn't being truthful about the pages he found. I'm really excited to see more young Egon Tiedemann in the 50s. I'm excited to see more Egon Tiedemann in the 80s. Unfortunately, he seems to be on his last legs, so I'm not sure how many more episodes of Egon Tiedemann I'm going to get. Or at least the 80s Egon Tiedemann. You know, ultimately, the thing that a lot of us look for in storytelling is emotional satisfaction, right? And there's just so much of that in this incredible story. A story that is firmly creating expectation, generating high stakes, and offering surprising outcomes, right? Playing into all of that emotional satisfaction. It's just incredible storytelling, in my opinion. And, you know, another noticeable thing about the writing of this show, the storytelling of the show, has been the fact that, you know, you could tell that the characters are crafted with an eye to their moment-to-moment impact on the audience, right? These are not one-dimensional characters, and that was so clear right from the beginning of the show in episode 1. And that's rare, you know. That's why, you know, some of the best shows of all time, some of the writing stands out from the rest, right? It's really quite easy to separate the mediocre from some of the best. And, you know, I firmly believe that this story has a plethora of characters that can be kind of, you know, taken out of the story and examined psychologically or culturally, right? And given standalone meaning. I mean, at least that's my opinion on the matter. You know, that's how highly I rate these characters and the writing of these characters. But yeah, I think that's about it for this one. I thoroughly enjoyed that. Certainly a lot of emotional satisfaction by the end of that episode and throughout that episode. So if you enjoyed that, consider dropping a like, consider dropping some comments, give me your thoughts. If you're interested in full length for this, and you know, this is the one time that I'm kind of pushing for full length, or really promoting full length, because, you know, I'm telling you, you know, I've left a few comments, replies. This is the toughest show I've ever edited, right? In my time on YouTube, it is so... it is just such a difficult task. It's the impossible task. And I say impossible because you end up kind of picking one important scene over another important scene. There's only so much you can fit into 10 minutes, especially for a show this detailed and jam-packed, right? 56 minutes essentially for each episode in season 2 at this point. So yeah, if you're ever thinking of becoming a patron, this is the best time for that. Though of course you could do it anytime, doesn't matter. I'm just putting it out there, you know, that a lot has to be cut out to, you know, kind of make that 10-minute time limit. So it can be cleared on YouTube instead of being blocked, right, by Netflix. But yeah, if you're interested in early access even, consider checking out the links in the description. Right then, that's about it for this one. Thank you for joining me, and thank you for your time. Time is precious. Time is precious, so I thank you for that. So I hope to see you again soon for the next one. Until then, take it easy.